Now, I know I'm quite late for this update, and the reason why is because if anyone watching this follows me on Instagram, you quite know well I have been suffering from a pretty bad case of Salmonella since actually pretty much exactly last week. So that's why there wasn't a video last week, a weekly update. That's also another reason why is because a good friend of mine was over while I was sick. That was completely unplanned, and I had a great time, but still wasn't feeling too great. Still not fully recovered, but I figured get this out here now. I've got some time. I might as well. I took a pretty big nap, so I'm kind of wired. It's past 9 p.m. here now. This video is probably not going to go up until tomorrow, so that'll be a Saturday. And I was originally going to go to a convention called Ronin Expo. Cancel that, guys. I'm just not there yet, unfortunately. Anyways, so I'm going to cover those 2 weeks, actually, not just last week, right? Because I missed the week, and actually not much has really happened because I've spent a week ill, right? Gosh, it's hitting me right now. It feels like it was just a couple days ago where I started feeling bad. Folks, when you get sick, it really messes with you, man. Don't ask how I got Salmonella. I don't know. I spent almost an entire day in the ER waiting to be seen, and that's what they told me. That's what I have antibiotics for. It's slowly doing its job, but guys, it's tough. So, anyways, what have I read? Well, last week I had just started The Shining, and I obviously have finished it now. Gave it a perfect score on Storygraph, actually. Now, a little story time with The Shining. This is probably Stephen King's most famous story, and definitely helps to have that incredible movie by Stanley Kubrick. Well, when I first read this book, I was in middle school, right? And I had just entered my obsession with Stanley Kubrick, which led to me watching The Shining first. So I wanted to read the book to compare it. I did the same with 2001: A Space Odyssey and A Clockwork Orange. Absolutely loved those books. Thought they were near perfect adaptations. Kind of have some mixed thoughts on the movie ending versus the book ending for Clockwork Orange, but I digress. So with The Shining, though, I was pretty negative on it actually when I first read it, and that was really unfortunate. Oh my gosh, delirious from the sickness. Anyways, unfortunately, I do have to say I was very spoiled by the movie, and I could not appreciate the book for what it was. Also, the book has a lot of adult themes. Oh, by the way, yeah, this, in case you didn't notice, this is a new camera. I finally upgraded to 1080p, so it's kind of a little wide of a lens that I would have hoped. I don't know if I can change that. Ignore the paint on the wall there, lack thereof. That was from an old leak, and I just haven't bothered to paint it because, it's out of my view. Anyways, so I was too young to appreciate The Shining and its deeper themes of spousal abuse, of alcoholism, of a man down on his luck, really trying despite everything to care for the family that he deep down really loves. It was a very adult story, and the movie really did not play into those themes well. It's much more of a spooky horror movie. There's not a lot of mystery about Jack's character. He's kind of crazy from the beginning, and pretty much removed all mentions of the alcoholism. So that and the way Wendy is portrayed in the movie, I actually, now that having reread The Shining, I think that Kubrick really dropped the ball on those two accounts. By all means, an amazing film, and if you just watch the film on its own, it is a great experience. But guys, I gotta say, the book is so much better. Like, I'm so happy I got to reread it with my adult brain actually doing some work and understanding the deeper themes that this book expresses. I thought it was just incredible. It was genuinely terrifying. My heart was racing, especially probably the two scariest moments are both with Danny. First is with room 217. That's right, folks, it's 217 in the book, not 237. That whole sequence is terrifying. Many say that's one of, if not Stephen King's scariest single chapter, and I gotta agree, it's up there, certainly from what I've read. And the other scene was Danny when he's stuck in the snow with the hedge monsters. Now, okay, hedge monsters sounds really silly, right? And the miniseries adaptation didn't really do it justice. But when you read the book, guys, it's terrifying. And I think that the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who definitely took some of its inspiration for that from this, because the idea is that you don't actually really see the hedge mazes move. It's more like when your back is turned and you look and they're in a different position. And that when Jack first sees that, he thinks that he's just kind of going nuts, right? Because that seems like, I'm sure we've all had that experience before where we imagine something is in a different place and where it really throws us off. You know, so in the book for The Shining, the Overlook is much more of a physical threat. There's like poltergeist, like things, objects come to life and try to attack them. The ghosts are way more involved. I thought it was pretty incredible in the book how it's a very slow process, and they do a good. Stephen King does a good job at setting up how long this is taking and the mental toll it's taking, especially on Wendy. But like I said, Wendy is a much better character in the book. She is a fighter. But you know, she is feminine and she is frail, and there's a lot of anxiety with her having to deal with all this. It's terrifying. It's a terrifying situation. And guys, if you've never read The Shining, like, you absolutely got it. It's an incredible, incredible story. I could not be happier with it. I gave it a 5. I still think Salem's Lot is better, just because with Salem's Lot, we're dealing with such a grand scale and grand cast. And with The Shining, King did the complete 180 and honed it in. I almost said phoned it in. He did not phone it in. He honed it in to that small cast. And one last thing I want to say about The Shining, Dick Hallorann, oh my god, incredible character. He was great in the movie too, but you get so much more of him in this. And he gets much more, should I say, involved. I won't really get into spoilers, but his whole sequence is fantastic, and you would think it would take you out of it because it's so different and it seems like it's so divorced. If you read the book, you know why I would say that. Why it's so divorced from the narrative, but it's not, because him and Danny have this special connection, and so you have this tension of him making his journey to the Overlook. It was quite well done. Unfortunately, the only other book by King that I have finished in these 2 weeks was Night Shift, which was a short story collection. Now, I see people kind of ignore his short stories sometimes, and I don't see why. I mean, I guess if you're not a short story guy, I get it. I myself, I'm a short story guy. I really like short stories. I've liked the EC comics, you know, like Tales from the Crypt. I love this show, and so did Stephen King, and I'll get to that in a moment, but Night Shift definitely feels like he's taken cues from that kind of storytelling. A lot of these stories are silly, but I like that, you know, and people might think it's stupid, but it's really in line with those old pulpy stories. So I absolutely love Night Shift. There's a couple stories here that I thought were kind of bad, and actually one of them has improved now that I've started reading another book. I'll get to that later, but some amazing stories here. I think by far the best, well, I don't want to say by far because it's certainly my favorite, but a lot of these are great, but the best one in my opinion was Quitters Inc. And Quitters Inc. is not quite a horror story. It's like a real gonzo satire on like self-help and anti-smoking campaigns and stuff. So it's this guy who's given it his all to quit smoking, and he joins this kind of club that hosted by this corporation called Quitters Inc., and they insist that they'll make him stop smoking. They don't really tell him how, and when you read it, you'll see it gets pretty gnarly. And there was actually a movie adaptation of a couple stories from Night Shift, and Quitters Inc. was one of them. And it stars James Woods, I believe, that story, which that's perfect casting. The movie, I believe, is called Cat's Eye. I wanted to see it, but I wanted to stick with Hooptober. I couldn't really fit it in. Sorry, guys. Definitely want to watch it. But actually, there was a Bollywood adaptation of Quitters Inc. called No Smoking. It looks fantastic. It's actually on my Hooptober list, so I will watch it. I was hoping I'd watch it by now, but, you know, I've been sick. but it looks crazy. It looks insane. They really play up the surrealism in it, so I'm really excited. So Quitters Inc. was by far the best. I also love The Boogeyman. Boogeyman was terrifying. That just got a movie. I haven't seen it, but David Dalmastian, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He plays the main character in that. It's perfect casting. Even before knowing that, when I was reading it, that's the kind of guy I was imagining. That kind of neurotic mess with that darkness within. Perfect casting. I don't know anything about the movie itself. I'm not really sure how you could expand this into a movie, frankly, but what great casting there. And my third favorite was Children of the Corn, which is probably by far the most famous story from this. It got like 50 million movies. I mean, gosh. But I thought it was going to be, for lack of a better word, corny. I thought it was going to be played out like, oh, well, oh, evil kids, ooh, because the movies were played out. But guys, this story was terrifying. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It's just some grisly, weird imagery. King, obviously, very inspired by Lovecraft. This gets very Lovecraft, especially at the end. Other great stories were The Man Who Loved Flowers. I don't know if that's an unpopular pick. It's a very short story, but I loved it, guys. It was weird. It was hokey, but it was great. It's that EC Comics vibe, very mean spirited. Graveyard Shift. Oh my God, one of the grossest things I've ever read, guys. The Mangler, one of my favorite films of all time. The short story was really good too, but guys, the movie takes the cake. That's one of the most underrated movies in my opinion. Sometimes They Come Back was as a teacher, that was a really terrifying story, actually. It was very weird. I loved it. And that got a movie series, too, so I wonder how that is. Gray Matter was very good. Very gross. The Ledge was great. Now, The Ledge reminded me a lot of a segment from... I might as well bring it up now. I was going to get to it later. Creepshow. One of my top favorite movies of all time, written by Stephen King, in the style of EC Comics. And there's a story in that called... Something to Tide You Over, and that felt like an evolution of The Ledge. I thought The Ledge was great, but Something to Tide You Over was a much better version of that, I thought. I Am the Doorway was so weird. It was great. And The Lawnmower Man, I mean, we all know the movie, but the movie is actually not based on the story. They just kind of took the name for the Stephen King clout. They actually had to remove the name after King successfully sued them for that. There's actually a prequel and a sequel to Salem's Lot in this. Jerusalem's Lot is the prequel. Very strange. Not really about the Salem's Lot that I knew from reading. It was much more Lovecraft inspired, but it was really cool. And then there was, what was it called? One for the Road, I believe. It was okay. It was kind of unnecessary, but it was cool to see kind of the after effects that the Salem's Lot incident had on the regional area around it. So that was pretty cool. I did not care for Trucks. I thought it was just stupid. It's just... Killer Trucks. I mean, what's funny about this one is that Stephen King famously wrote and directed his own adaptation with Trucks. It was Maximum Overdrive. And guys, I'm going to be honest, when I first saw that movie, I did not like it. Maybe I'll like it more now, but I do think it was better than Trucks, so I'll give it that. And the other story that I thought was a dud was Night Surf. Just because I kind of didn't understand what was going on, and it just kind of seemed like nothing, really. But having started reading The Stand, which I'll get to, I'm starting to connect the dots, and I actually see Night Surf is a pretty interesting kind of prologue to The Stand, in a way. Any other stories to highlight here? Strawberry Spring was pretty good. And that actually got an audio narration adaptation starring Garrett Hedlund, which sounds like it'd be pretty cool. The Woman in the Room, that was adapted by Frank Darabont, who famously adapted Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, and The Mist, of course, that's one of the best. And he got to start adapting that. So the story was okay. It was cool to see King do something different, I'll say that. Anyways... that's pretty much it for Night Shift. I loved it. I think it's absolutely worth reading. Those top three stories, Quitters Inc., The Boogeyman, and Children of the Corn, incredible stuff. I mean, go pick up those stories on your own. I think Children of the Corn might be the longest story, besides like maybe Jerusalem's Lot. And it definitely feels like the one that could have been a full book. It's incredible. Incredible. Now, like I said, the newest Stephen King that I started was The Stand. I actually have a physical copy of this one. I had a physical copy of The Shining too back there. I'm about a fourth done. Guys, I wish I was farther in this. I'm loving it. I already know I'm giving this a 10, man. Like, the setup to the apocalypse with Captain Trips was terrifying. The way that Stephen King shows this gradual degradation of society and really just humanity as a whole was bone-chilling. It was horrifying. I can't even imagine. I mean, okay, disclaimer, I am reading the uncut version. It's over like 1,200 pages, I believe. I am reading the uncut version, which has like 500 additional pages that had to be cut from the original. I can totally imagine why some of this had to be cut. Not that it's bad, not that it's unnecessary, but it is graphic, guys, and it is heavy. I cannot imagine reading this when it came out, man. It's still shocking to this day, especially after, you know, what we lived through. You know, Captain Trips is a little scarier than it probably was back then. So, I could make the whole video, the rest of this, about The Stand, so I'm just going to keep it very brief. Randall Flagg's introduction was great. What a great character already. I am spoiled about him in the Dark Tower, so I'm really excited to see how he gets there. Nick, great character. I love the kind of weird gimmick with the whole deaf mute thing. Larry Underwood, fantastic. I love when stories have like fictional media in it, especially music. You know, that's a big reason why I love Tolkien so much, and Robert Jordan, is because they're really great songwriters. And Baby Can You Dig Your Man by Larry Underwood is like very believable as a song from back then, so that's a lot of fun. I definitely feel like King is kind of talking about himself with Larry Underwood, especially with the crazy parties that he's throwing and stuff, and his struggles with addiction. But just a great story, man. Poke and Lloyd, hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious until it's not, and then it becomes very heavy and dark. And that goes for The Stand in general. It's such a unique way to tell this story, and I honestly, guys, I don't know where this story's going. I've been so blind on it, and this was by far the King book that I was most excited to read, and it is absolutely living up to his expectations. If you don't know, The Stand is a fantasy post-apocalypse story about a disease known as Captain Trips that escapes from a military base and wipes out, I believe it's 99.6% of the world's population. So a lot of that, just like Salem's Lot, we get this grand setup with all these characters in many different places, and they end up turning into these factions. And again, I don't know where the story's going. I know it's gonna has apparently some crazy finale, and I'm very excited to get there, guys. But it's taken its time. It's taken longer than I wanted it to, and like I don't know if I said this before. It's been a while, but I'm skipping the Richard Bachman books for now. I am gonna get to them, but I want to try to focus. I really want to get to the Gunslinger by the end of this month. I think it can still happen. It's just as soon as I'm recovered fully, I gotta full steam ahead, go through The Stand. I have the audiobook. The audiobook is great, by the way. Forgot the name of the narrator, but he does a really good job with many different accents. I just gotta, once I get through The Stand, I know the others will be chump change. And that's a shame, kind of, because I would love to take my time with this. At the same time, though, I do want to keep going because the story has got me invested. However, I do have to say, out of all this King reading, I did take a detour. I started today Howl's Moving Castle, the classic British fantasy book that was famously adapted by Hayao Miyazaki, which I actually do not care for that movie at all. I think it's just very kind of dull. It's one of my hotter takes. But I started the book because my college's book club, that's the book they chose, and I'm like, okay, it's a small book, it's very small. I think on my Kobo it's like 284 pages on my Kobo, so I'm already almost a fourth done with that. I started today, so very light reading, and it's fun so far. Sophie has already turned into the old lady. She's already in Howl's Castle. Story goes by pretty fast in it, but I like it. It's got a very quaint, old-time fairy tale tone, which I like a lot, and I'm enjoying it. But once I'm done with that, the book club meeting is next Thursday. I'm definitely going to be done before then. As soon as I'm done with that, man, it's back on The Stand. And I feel like while I'm sick, reading House of Castle is kind of a nice reprieve, I don't know, from reading The Stand, because The Stand is very heavy and dark. House of Castle is very easy to read, it's very light. So, guys, I'm sorry, I'm not giving up on King. It's just special circumstance, and frankly, I want something a little light right now. So, that's that. That's all I've read. I know, sorry. That's what happens. As far as movies go, Hooptober has also been going pretty darn slow. I did see Saw 10, right? I did say that I was going to see that. Loved it, absolutely loved it. Thought it was not the best Saw movie, like people kind of make it out to be, but it's definitely top 3 or 4, I'd say. Like, Saw 1, frankly, 2 and 3 are probably the top ones for me. Great movie, though. Oh my gosh, Tobin Bell, give that man the Oscar, please. For Beyond Fest, I wrapped that up with Pacific Rim and The Raid. Those were the last 2 that I saw. Those were all the same day. Pacific Rim was incredible. I mean, I've seen it so many times. That's probably my most watched film in the theaters, besides maybe Alita Battle Angel. I saw it at Beyond Fest in 35mm with Guillermo del Toro Q&A. He just talked about Ultraman the whole time. It was such a treat. And then I saw The Raid for the first time, the 4K restoration. That was so much fun. It was great. Loved that movie so much. It was pretty much exactly what I was hoping it would be. So then for Hooptober, I saw The Strange World of Coffin Joe. So this is not a real Coffin Joe movie. It is directed by Coffin Joe. It's introduced by Coffin Joe, but it's actually a short story collection, kind of like Night Shift, but this time it's only 3. And frankly, the first 2 stories were pretty lame, but the last one was great. It was incredible. And for the 60s, man, this is extreme content. I mean, I was even looking away at times. It's truly just disturbing, depraved stuff, like that even to this day I think people would be afraid to try. And that just speaks to how Coffin Joe, how powerful his films were. I saw 10 Rillington Place, which is based on a true story of a serial killer who lived in this apartment building, and he would actually kill the tenants and then hide their bodies in the walls, and would even have sex with their corpses sometimes. But the killer, John Christie, was played by Richard Attenborough, who's known as Dr. Hammond for Jurassic Park. Incredible performance. Maybe even better was John Hurt as the simpleton Tim Evans, who falls into this horrible true circumstance. Guys, this is a terrifying, disgusting movie. Basically, this serial killer set up this guy who can't even read. He sets him up as the man who quote-unquote killed his wife and child, because of this elaborate setup by Christie, where he pretended he was a abortionist, and that the wife died during the abortion, so he put the blame on Tim and was like, well, you were the one that told me to do this, you need to get out of town and I'll hide the bodies. And he ends up just setting him up as the killer. It's horrible, and I guess I can say, because it's a true story, but Tim ended up getting the death penalty for it, and it wasn't until years later that they caught John Christie. It was a terrifying movie. Like, if you're interested in true crime, it was so raw and very by the facts. It was bone chilling movie. Then I rewatched *Malignant*, it's one of my favorites, and then I saw *Sisters* by Brian De Palma. This was on my list for a while, because I heard, I love 70s horror. It's my favorite decade, probably, I would say, for horror, for cinema in general, maybe. And I love De Palma. He directed my favorite movie, *Phantom of the Paradise*. And this movie also has Bill Finley, who played the main character of Winslow Leach, aka the Phantom. It has him. It has Margaret Kidder, who was known for Black Christmas, and also she was Lois Lane in Superman, and she's great in it. The movie is very twisted, guys. It was actually very disturbing, very psychological. Definitely inspired by Hitchcock, like most of De Palma stuff, but this one more so than others. I think it definitely has a lot of Rope and Rear Window, if you can believe that. A lot of Giallo influence as well, especially Mario Bava. If you want just a weird movie to make you uncomfortable, it's on Max, and *Sisters* is a great movie for that. I also saw, I rewatched One Piece movie 6, Baron of Matsuri. It's my favorite One Piece movie. Then I saw Equinox. Equinox was a movie I'd want to see for a while, also. And this was actually a Criterion film. I believe it's DVD only, but just from the cover, I was like, this was a weird movie for Criterion release. And having seen the movie, yeah, it's pretty awesome, but it's so strange. And I'm happy that Criterion released a movie this weird and frankly trashy. But it's like this weird like Harryhausen tribute where these people go into like the canyons of LA and encounter a satanic cult that summons these giant stop motion monsters. I mean, guys, it's awesome. It was such a good movie. It reminded me a lot of, in my opinion, actually is the worst movie ever, Monos the Hands of Fate. It's terrible. Guys, like, don't even watch it. It's not worth it. I think it's just garbage. I don't know why. It's like this cult film. It's terrible. Anyways, it reminded me of that, and then another movie, Winter Beast, which I think Winter Beast is kind of like an entertaining version of Monos. It's awful, it's terrible, but it's hilarious. And Winter Beast has these stop motion monsters in it that are a lot of fun. Anyways, Equinox was like if Monos and Winter Beast were mixed, man. It was so much fun. I love the hokey, like early 60s, I mean late 60s, early 70s filmmaking on display. The stop motion effects and the forced perspective were actually pretty damn great. Like, not just for the time, it holds up really well. I believe the man who worked on this ended up actually working on Clash of the Titans with Ray Harryhausen. So, if you're interested in creature features, Equinox is a very fun time. It's not great, but it's a lot of fun. Then I saw the Zodiac Killer, the 70s one, not to be confused with the David Fincher film Zodiac. This movie was terrible, guys. It was terrible. But it has a kind of a funny story. So this movie was actually made in collaboration with the San Francisco Police Department. They actually made this movie thinking that if they premiered it in San Francisco, the Zodiac Killer would actually show up. They had this elaborate plan where I believe they had to like they were gonna win like a motorcycle, and they had to write something down for it, and they had people analyze the handwriting to see if any of them matched the Zodiac Killer, and one of them I guess actually did. So they confronted him and they questioned him, but he ended up getting out. And but the guy who made the movie insisted, even like for years after that he believed that was actually the Zodiac Killer. So you believe whatever you want, but it doesn't make the movie good. It was pretty terrible, and it's hard to not compare it unfavorably to Zodiac by David Fincher, because that's just a masterpiece. But even without that, like, the movie's not good, guys. It's very dull. It has some entertaining moments and some entertaining dialogue, but it's not worth watching. Like, just go watch Zodiac instead. And before I get to the last movie I saw, I just want to say I bought 3 films, and just wanted to highlight them because they're all ones I've seen already, but they're some of my favorites, each of them. So I've got to upgrade Creepshow. I had the Scream Factory Blu-ray. Now I have the 4K. It has this reversible cover that I love. Like I said, guys, Creepshow, this is one of my favorite films of all time. It was written by Stephen King, directed by George A. Romero, starring Tom Atkins and Leslie Nielsen, and Stephen King himself in a segment, and effects by Tom Savini. Guys, this is, in my opinion, this is the perfect Halloween movie. If you need a single movie to watch this season, make it Creepshow, guys. It is incredible. It's so much fun. As it says, as the tagline, the most fun you'll ever have being scared. It's a very fun, entertaining movie. Then I also upgraded my Scream Factory as well for Exorcist 3 Legion to 4K. This is one of my favorite films, directed by William Blatty, who wrote the Exorcist novel and the sequel Legion. Now, guys, this is based on the book sequel to The Exorcist, Legion. This is the true sequel to The Exorcist. Don't take anything else. Do not watch The Believer. Please watch this instead. This has probably the greatest performance in horror history with Brad Dourif as the killer. I won't elaborate much on his role because, guys, this movie needs to be seen to be believed. It is a masterpiece. And there's actually 2 versions in this, the theatrical and the Legion cut. Both are great for different reasons. The Legion cut is the better film, but theatrical is just so darn entertaining. There's a whole stories about that. It's a video on its own right there. The last thing I got was actually the Cowboy Bebop movie on Blu-ray. Now, the licensing for this movie is really screwed up, so you cannot get this on Blu-ray in the US. So, luckily in the UK, Manga Entertainment, I believe, they're a classic import license in the UK for Japanese, kind of like the less, not like less popular, kind of like more adult, more raunchy content. they did dubs for example, like the OVA Cyber City 808, which actually, fun fact, has cast members from Dark Souls because again, this is a UK company, so they did that, and so they actually put out a Blu-ray for Cowboy Bebop. I've heard this is region free. I haven't tried it yet because I just got it, but guys, I'm so excited for this because this movie, if you don't know, takes place on Halloween, and I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's better than the show for Cowboy Bebop. Like, if you needed to just experience one piece of media from Watanabe, this is it. This movie is a masterpiece. So, very, very excited for that. And that wraps everything up. So, what am I planning on reading? Well, I'm going to finish The Stand, of course. Then I've got The Dead Zone, I've got Cujo, and I've got Firestarter, and then I believe I have The Gunslinger, and that's it. So, very excited for that. What am I planning on watching? Well, I still have a lot of Hooktober to get through. I'm like not even halfway done, guys. I'm going to watch Tales from the Crypt next, probably that, and Twins of Evil. Some other ones. So new additions actually to the list include Submersion of Japan, which is based on Japan Sinks. Ignore the crappy Netflix series. This movie is from the 70s, and it actually stars Hiroshi Fujioka, who you would know as the Kamen Rider Ichigo, so I'm really excited for that. Yeah, I've got a lot of movies planned, but I mean, we'll see. We'll see when I kick this stomach bug, and I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to. Oh gosh, I didn't even get to mention that last movie. Sorry guys, rewind a bit. I saw Killers of the Flower Moon. Yeah, that's right. Even though I'm sick, I stomached it, and I had to go see the new Martin Scorsese film. You know, and it was incredible. It was incredible, guys. I wrote a full review for it, and I'm not gonna get into it now because it's not really relevant to what I was just talking about with like all this horror and stuff, although this is a pretty darn horrifying film. Guys, please make your journey out to go watch this. If I could watch this while suffering from salmonella, and I didn't have to use the bathroom one time, by the way. If I can make it, you can too. It's such an important story by, you know, undoubtedly the greatest living filmmaker. It just makes me so happy that we're still getting films like this. You know, this and Oppenheimer being the successes that they are really filling me with some hope, guys. That, you know, not everything has to be Marvel, not everything has to be like a reboot or a sequel. You know, you can have these long, epic, traditional films, and I'm not sure if it's one of his best. It's definitely like this, with his newest movies, The Irishman and Silence, they're definitely darker and more melancholic. And frankly, guys, it was at the point in the film where like I was like, I don't know how much more I can handle with this. It gets so heavy, so dark, and so sad. But it's an important story to be told, and I think he told it extremely well. So, okay, that's all. That's all I have. Yeah, hopefully by next week I'll have read The Stand. I definitely will have finished House of the Castle, and I'll see you there.